everybody. Welcome back to the channel. We are back with Nine Line Live. Some laughter for us. We got Cheeseburger on the line again. What's going on, Cheeseburger?
How's it going, man?
So I'm sure everybody wants to know, like, yes, it is a spinoff or a mockery or whatever you want to call it of Roadkill. Uh, he wears flip-flops all the time, so Fryburger, Cheeseburger. Um, you've seen him on the channel before, but we call him Bullshits. Obviously, that's supposed to be
Dulcich.
Dulcich. And then, believe it or not, I actually used to be in somewhat decent shape, and so I go by Fat again because I'm fat once again. Suppose that's obviously Finnegan, but I guess now that Motor Trend's not a thing, maybe we won't get sued over that.
Yeah, if it catches traction, we'll get that cease and desist
Yeah,
letter.
cease and desist. Do not say our names anymore. Yeah. Well, just like last time, we wanted to kind of just start the show off with thanking those who have jumped on this channel for partnerships. Thanks again to Oxedo for reaching out to us for the LED headlight bulbs. If you haven't had the opportunity to see that yet, check out the video. Those headlight bulbs, those LEDs are really bright, and I look forward to converting my whole Tahoe over to them. Really can see a big difference in them. You get a 15% discount if you use the link in my description on that video, and it throws some change our way, so we can keep doing some things on the channel. Um, so if you missed last week, the premise of the show was, when I say the word small block, what's the first thing that comes to mind? Both Cheeseburger and I have kind of come to the conclusion that most people believe when you say it's got a small block, most people automatically think of the small block Chevy, and specifically the 350. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. You say small block, and you're like, oh, well, it must be a 283 or a 350. One of those twos,
Right.
or anything in between, of course.
Sure. So where we left off at was at the very end. I made a statement that is sure to piss the entire internet off when I said that the LS, and I'm putting air quotes here, LS is not an LS. It is, in fact, still a small block Chevy. We had a long discussion about RPO codes, which stands for regular production option. Um, and Cheeseburger, give us a quick recap, because I think you nailed it in the last episode on why do you believe that everybody refers to the Gen 3 and Gen 4 small blocks as an LS?
Well, it was a big departure from the small block that we knew. Uh, it all started in the '97 Corvette, um, C5 Vet. It had I had this weird engine in it called an LS1. These weird looking cathedral port heads. I mean, we had never seen anything like it. And then the '98 Trans Am and Camaros came out with the LS1 too. Um, and it was such a badass engine that kind of took us all by surprise. And from then on out, the LS, those two letters just kind of stuck. So
Right.
we went from calling it a small block to an LS, even though it is still technically a Gen. What is it? That's the Gen 3 small block.
Yeah, an LS1 Gen 3 small block, yeah. So, and I know as people start to watch these things and start listening in on this, that, I hear the term, oh, boomer and all that other stuff, and because, if you don't call it an LS, you're a boomer or whatever, but um, man, it's still an overhead valve, 90-degree, push rod, liquid-cooled V8 with a 4.4-inch bore spacing. And that, for all intents and purposes, is what defines a small block Chevy with the 4.4-inch bore spacing specifically. I think Ford was just a little smaller than that, wasn't it?
The what the
Like a 302. Wasn't it like a 4.3 or 4.38 or something like that bore spacing?
yeah, right.
So, the 4.4-inch bore spacing has been something that has remained since 1955 when the first generation small block Chevy or small block was introduced.
The
So,
265 V8.
I mean, I don't know. It's just one of my pet peeves, and I understand that the industry now refers to all the LS1s and all the derivatives as an LS. But when I see somebody calling an iron block LM7 or an iron block LQ4 an LS, it just, I don't know, man. I don't, for whatever reason, it gets on my nerves.
See, and even even I will say, if it's like an LQ4, I will like specifically say like, yeah, man, it's got an LS style engine in it.
Yeah, I mean, so I think you could totally refer to it as, it's in the LS family, right? But
Yeah,
we don't. We just the industry has just kind of looped or lumped all of these engines into one thing, and they just call it an LS. Yeah,
yeah,
I LS swapped it. Most of the
yeah. LS swapped the world, right?
Yeah, I mean, but most of the engines that are in these quote LS swaps aren't an LS.
They're not
LS1,
LS.
LS6, LS2s.
Yeah, 70-80% of all the so-called LS swaps out there they're not LSs. They're like 4.8 and 5.3 liter truck blocks,
Right.
truck engines.
Yeah, and I don't know. So just a real quick history. Obviously, everybody knows, as Cheeseburger said, the LS1 came out in the '97 Corvette. Didn't know that they actually started working on production on this new uh, engine, the Gen 3 small block, in 1992. Interestingly enough, 92 was the first year that the LT1 Gen 2 small block came out. So I guess that's why there wasn't a lot of many years of that Gen 2. They'd already kicked it to the curb.
Yeah, you speaking of the LT1?
Yeah, the Gen 2 LT1.
Yeah, I don't think Chevrolet intended for that engine to stick around for very long. It was just kind of a placeholder, so to speak.
Yeah. Yeah, it was here in May of 92 is whenever General Motors started the work on or the planning for this Gen 3 small block, and then work began in 1993.
Yeah.
Interestingly enough, they actually had a former NHRA record holder helping design this engine, which I didn't know.
Huh. Interesting. And then, um, some point around that same time, Ford was developing their mod motor. They were trying to perfect that. So,
Yeah, one of the things
Chevy.
I was noticing and doing the research or whatever and looking up this stuff about this for the show tonight is GM actually got a lot of crap for sticking with the pushrod V8 because 96, right? 96 was the first mod motor for 4.6 liter in Ford.
I think I think the first mod motor was actually put in the 1994 Lincoln Mark 8.
Okay,
And then um, it made its way into the Mustang in '96
gotcha. Yeah, I was kind of looking,
with a measly 215 horsepower.
yeah, with a 310 pound-feet of torque or something crazy, right?
Yeah,
It was silly.
yeah,
But everybody was giving GM crap because at the time people were calling for dual overhead cammed engines and all that, and that's actually what spawned GM to create the North Star V8. Um, that call for overhead cammed engines.
yeah, which was a disaster of an engine.
Exactly. Yeah, something too, man. I think it's really neat that they've stuck with this 4.4-inch bore spacing, which makes a small block, right?
Yeah,
If we're going to define a small block by its bore spacing from production models, right? Not any aftermarket blocks, not anything like that. Anything that GM actually produced with a 4.4-inch bore spacing, the new Gemini engine is still a 4.4-inch bore space. And that's the one in the Corvette.
Really?
Yep.
And is it designated the LT1 or
I think it's like an LS7 or something like that.
oh LS? Okay.
Yeah, but it's the. Are they flat plane? I'm not really sure, but
Yeah, the new vet with the 5 point, is it the 5.5 liter engine that they're putting in the Z06? I think it's a flat plane crank.
yeah, I'm trying to pull it up real quick here. Let's see. Chevrolet Gemini small block. So it's an LT6 and an LT7.
Okay.
But yeah, they're still 4.4-inch bore spacing. Um, the LT6 is the 5.5 liter
Yeah.
naturally aspirated V8, and it says it's the 8th generation Corvette Z06, capable of 8,600 RPM.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
unbelievable.
I I may have to look up some sound clips on that one.
Yeah, that's a screamer. But they don't. They're still not calling. And this is quotes right here. Okay, this is an actual quote. While technically a small block engine because of its bore spacing of 4.4 inches, General Motors engineers do not consider it to be part of the traditional Chevrolet small block lineage because of the substantial reworking, specialized development, and unique technical features distinguishing its design. Now, that's the Gemini small block, the LT6 and LT7 that we're talking about. It
Okay.
doesn't say anything like that for the Gen
For the
3 and Gen 4, and in fact, the Gen 5 when it references a small block.
hmm. And now the Gen 5 is the direct injected
Right.
LS LS style
Well, that's when they
with the
started
rec.
redesignating them as the LTs again.
Okay,
So,
back LTs, the rec port heads, stuff like that.
yeah, they're the weird. They're kind of like an almost like an oval. They're rec
Oh,
port, but not rec ports like it's on like an LS3.
okay.
They're kind of raised ports, and they flow like they flow gangbusters. But um, I don't know, man. I would love to throw a set of those on the truck, do a full on conversion, but you have to change the cam. You have to run a special cam and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
But I guess back to kind of what this is about is I know a lot of people get real pissed off about it. I mean, there's two camps. There's it's an LS, and then there's the it's not an LS camp, and it's one of the most I guess controversial maybe topics for people to complain about is I don't know. I don't understand why it's such a big deal. I mean, if I want to call it a Gen 3 small block, let me call it a Gen 3 small block. Um, I mean, I just refer to it by the liters, Oh, my truck has a 6.0 in it.
Yeah.
I don't call it an LQ4. And I damn sure don't call it an LS. So why do you
Yeah.
think it's such
But
a
you know
heated
it.
topic,
Uh,
man?
I don't know. If you were to say yeah, it's a Gen 3 small block, you're probably going to get some crazy looks like,
Yeah, man.
what the hell are you talking about, Gen 3 small block? That's an LS. Like, yeah, kind of.
Yeah. Well, I say that it was derived from the LS,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
I just again to me it's just a technical thing, but it's just one of those things that really gets on my nerves. I mean, we even have like Summit now has parts, and they call them a Pro LS. Why does it have to be an LS? I guess it's
yeah,
easy to market. Everybody already kind of refers to it as that, so I get it from a marketing standpoint. I just don't understand it from I guess a hot rodding or an old gearhead like myself, and I say old.
yeah. Me and you we're Gen X. I mean, technically, you kind of fall in the millennial category, but you're Gen X, and we have experienced both sides. We've experienced the performance of the old school small block and the performance of the new style LS motors. And I don't know. I guess in our age group, it pisses people off in our age group the most.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, I don't. I hear stuff. If you watch the Street Outlaws and stuff back whenever Street Outlaws was actually worth watching, um, you could hear them say, "Oh, it sounds like an LS." Okay, it has a different firing order, so I get that it sounds different, but I go back to, but why is it an LS? But I think you're onto something there. With we've actually owned and seen both sides of it.
Yeah,
Most of the newer guys that are kind of into the hot rod stuff probably have not, because these things came out in '97. The Gen 3 and Gen 4s all the way through 2013, I think, is when they came out with the Gen 5. Um, there's over 100 million of these style engines out there. If you're talking the truck engines, the actual aluminum block LS1, 2, 6. Um, so they're everywhere. So you're
yeah,
right. They probably haven't experienced the other side.
yeah, yeah. Somebody, what, 30 and younger, they're that's the age group that's always going to refer to it as an LS.
Yeah. Do you think that the Gen 1, Gen 2 small block will ever make a resurgence?
Uh, Possibly, people may go back to it. Uh, some of the 20 and 30-year-olds that I speak of now, um, when they get older, when they get into their 50s and 60s, later on in life, and they want to fix up like an old Chevelle or a Nova or an old square body Chevy pickup, they may want to go period correct and put a small block in it instead of an LS.
Yeah.
And I would be happy to see that, because
Yes.
you see two. I I can't stand when I go to a car show and I see an awesome square body Chevy. 1980 Chevy pickup looks fantastic. They pop the hood and there's a damn LS under there.
Yep.
I would rather see an old school awesome 350 or a big block 454 or something along those lines. Yeah, I know it's not going to produce as much power, and it's kind of unreliable compared to some of the modern stuff, but still.
Yeah, I think the nostalgia of, just like you and I talked about several times, um, we talked about putting a carburetor on my truck, just to be able to pop the hood and see a carburetor sitting there for guys, you know, you're my age or around that time frame.
Yeah.
It's nostalgic, man. There's just
Yep.
something cool about seeing a toilet bowl sitting on top of a big single plane
Hmm.
intake.
Yep. And if you can get that old toilet bowl or that old carburetor on a single plane intake to run, to run with a new school hot rod, then you must be doing something right.
Yeah, man, give me a vacuum gauge and a flat blade screwdriver, and we'll make this thing go.
Yep.
Well, I kind of along the same lines as you kind of touched on it, but going to all the car shows and going to the tracks and seeing that they're putting these engines, these small block Gen 3, Gen 4s, LSs in all these cars. I understand it if you're building a drag car or a street car, that you're going to do some racing with, because they do make tremendous amount of power. But if you think back over time, right, you go to a car show, and let's say you see an a 90s resto mod, okay? And in that 90s resto mod, they may have a tune port injection engine in it. But that was what was shit hot at that time.
Yep.
And everybody put those in there. And then it
Yep.
was the LT1s, the Gen 2 small blocks. You started kind of seeing those showing up in these resto mods and whatever else. And
Yep.
now it's nothing but this Gen 3 and Gen 4 style engines in them. And it's
Uh-huh.
boring. It's tired. It's done.
Yeah.
I agree. I,
Well,
I would
and
rather pop a
and
hood and see a 396 big block in there and go, holy cow, that's different.
yep. Yep. Yeah. 20 years ago that was kind of the norm, but now that would be like, holy shit, that's different.
Yeah, how much did you have to pay for that?
Yeah.
And where did
Well,
you find it, first of all?
and just to touch on the Ford side of things, you wouldn't believe how many people are taking Fox body Mustangs and sticking Coyote engines in them. And I'm like, I can't stand that. The Coyote engine, yeah, the Coyote engine is quickly becoming the new LS, right?
If you can afford them.
And if you can afford them, but it's such an ugly engine,
Yep.
like just physically ugly. I would so much rather see a 351 Windsor sitting under that hood with like a big Vortec S trim supercharger hanging off the or T trim supercharger hanging off the side of it. I would much rather see that than a freaking Coyote engine and a Fox body.
Yeah. Well, I think from a power standpoint, I mean, you nailed it on the head earlier. You know, the LS family, and I'm going to say it that way, the LS family engines and the LTs, the new LTs, Gen 5 stuff, they make a tremendous amount of power, as do the Coyotes. I mean, Ford, credit to Ford, man, for sticking with that damn mod motor, because there for a long time they were getting made fun of. Uh, you know, that 96 through 98 GT was pathetic. Um, no matter
Yeah,
what you did to it, man. I
yeah.
mean, what you could throw the ported heads and cams and everything at it, and still not put down 300 to the wheels.
I knew this is kind of getting off subject, but I knew a guy that took a Mustang and he wanted as much power out of his 4.6 liter overhead cam mod motor as he could possibly get. And this guy dumped thousands of dollars into this motor. I mean, worked heads, high compression, pistons, big cams, intake, everything. I think that thing only put down like 320 or 330 to the wheels.
Yeah, I'd burn it to the ground. I mean,
He sold he sold it not too long after that.
yeah, I would be so depressed. I would be so depressed. But there. I brought the Ford thing up too because I mean I know it's special to you, but the topic here is the Gen 3 and Gen 4 small blocks and how big of a departure these style of engines were from the Gen 1 and Gen 2. And it's goes without saying that they took a lot of cues on these new on the new cylinder heads specifically from Ford.
Yeah, yeah,
The
they
spacing them out, the even valve spacing, the way the exhaust ports and the intake ports and all that. I think they kind of took what the Ford small block was doing because shoot, even a
well,
mildly ported Ford small block 302 head, it flowed way. It had really great flow numbers.
yeah. I mean, yeah, and you have the people that say that they think that GM ripped off the LS or ripped off the 351 Windsor design because if you look at an LS1 early style and compare it to a 351 Windsor, there's a lot of similarities. I mean, even the heads, even an LS1 head will dang near bolt up to a 351 Windsor Ford, and it will actually bolt up and run with some modifications.
Yeah, those things.
That's how close those two engines, look.
Right. Well, shoot. Let's talk about the block design, right? So, in the Gen 3 and Gen 4s, one of the biggest departures from the Gen 1, Gen 2s was the 6-bolt main and the skirting on the bottom of the block. Man, Ford was doing the Y block way before Chevy even thought about doing that. I
Yeah,
mean, it's
they
essentially
they
what they
start
did.
yeah they started that back in what the late '60s, early '70s with the Y block.
I think it was before that.
They actually, yeah, I was fixing to say it was actually before that.
It was in the 50s because that
Yeah,
55 Crown Victoria we had a Y block in it.
yeah,
And then the FE replaced that, I think. But I'm
yeah.
I'm not a Ford guy at all, so especially back in the day.
Yeah, with the old Fords, I never really got into the old Fords very much.
Well, I think I think that this is a good discussion to have, and unfortunately, again, it winds up usually winding up in controversy and a lot of people getting angry in the conversation. But um, yes, the Generation 3 small block Chevy was a real big departure from what we think of as a traditional small block Chevy. But again, I'll reiterate, for all intents and purposes, it is still and will always be a small block Chevy.
Yep.
That's why another reason that the swap is so popular is because they're just a little longer or deeper rather because of that block design, but they fit into the same engine compartment so easily because it's the same sized engine as the Gen 1 and Gen 2 uh,
Yes.
dimensionally.
Yep.
So, and again, the aftermarket, like you talked about before, the aftermarket just supports it in such a huge fashion that it's never going away. I mean, we're gonna have these things around for as long as our grandkids are around,
Yeah. Hopefully so.
and
I
probably
mean,
beyond that. Because I gotta be tell you that so far, kind of what I'm seeing is there's not just a whole lot of aftermarket support for the Gen 5 stuff. Um, with the direct injection and stuff, and it's starting to get a little more. Maybe because but shoot, it's already been around for 12 years.
12 years and there's still not a whole lot of support or aftermarket for it.
Yeah, I mean, you can get some ported heads and cams and stuff like that, but most of the people that are making real power with them, um, they're having supplemental injectors and all, I don't know. Yeah, I was reading about
Yeah.
it the other day. Like, there's just really not a whole lot. I don't think you're going to start seeing a whole bunch of Gen 5 transplants or swaps. I think you're still going to see the Gen 3, Gen 4 stuff as the popular swaps. Mainly, I guess maybe because there's just more of them. Um,
Yeah. There's a lot more of them in junkyards and everywhere else.
yeah. Well, things got a lot more complicated too in the Gen 5 stuff, computer wise, because they started in 13 with like my 13 Tahoe, um, and I'm not sure exactly when they started doing this. I just got into the tuning world, so I'm still learning that. But they went to the ECM or PCM and the TCM, and they weren't merged together. So, and now it's gotten even more complicated. I mean, shoot, you and I were talking about not long ago trying to just take the speed limiter off of a Dodge, and you got to send the computer in and get cracked and
Yeah.
jailbroke and
Uh huh. It's yeah, it's interesting. What year was that? 2015, 2016 is when you had to start sending the Dodge ECMs in to get jailbroken.
yeah, it's
That was the same year that the Hellcat came out.
ha ha ha.
So evidently Dodge, somebody internally in Dodge said, "We don't want people messing with these computers. Let's figure out a way to lock them up."
Yep. Or make it. I
And
mean, there's a lot of
they did a
smart
pretty
people
good
out there
job.
that can get into
Yeah,
it and do what they
yeah.
need to do, but they make it hard. I mean, how
Well, I
many
know, I
transmission
know.
credits was it going to be just to unlock his transmission? Four?
Yeah, yeah, quite a few. And I know Chevrolet did something real similar with the new C8 Corvette, the mid-engine Corvette. Um, they locked their computer up in that thing too, to the point where it took geniuses to figure out how to finally break into that thing to start tuning them.
Yeah. Well, we're getting right at the 30-minute mark, but one of the other things I wanted to kind of discuss, and I don't know if you're familiar with it or not, but um, have you seen the aftermarket blocks? I think World puts one out that's an actual, the bottom end is based on the Gen 1 small block, but it's the top end up is designed to have the Gen 3 and up induction system.
I have not seen it, but I faintly recall you telling me about it a couple of months ago.
Yeah, man, I think I think that would be so cool because you get the stability and the harmonics, are better in the on the bottom end from a splayed 4-bolt block, I think,
Yeah,
than the 6-bolt because it creates a harmonic with those side bolsters. But then you get those super crazy high flowing heads, and it's like the best of both worlds.
hmm. Yeah.
They built one on engine power for their triple threat Camaro. I think they built a 440-inch stroker, and it made stupid power.
Wow.
Stupid power. But well, we're at the 30-minute mark, and we're going to try to keep these things, right at 30 minutes because everybody has very short attention spans these days. Be sure to tune in next week. Cheeseburger will not be with me, but I have something on tap for you guys. We're going to talk about that Holdner cam, how I came up with my power estimations, and kind of go through some other stuff. I have some new and exciting stuff to show you. So stay tuned, and we will see you guys next time.
See you guys later.